Well, welcome to Music and Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Moshe Lewis. I'm ecstatic beyond belief to be joined by the Scott twins, better known as the Whispers. 15 top 10 R&B singles, 8 top 10 R&B albums, 2 of which reached #1. Gentlemen, brothers, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having us. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. The history, it's just more than 50 years in the business. I'm in awe.
Thank you.
So I want to kind of go back in time and try to picture us in Watts, in the time that you all were growing up in the 60s. What was that like, just growing up in your childhood?
It was very exciting. If you remember, the 60s was I guess Motown was in its heyday.
Yes.
So we weren't any different than most young people that wanted to be in entertainment. We wanted to be like Motown.
Right.
The Temptations, the Four Tops, and of course in Watts, where we lived, there was a talent show that was held every year that we entered as the Scott twins. This is before the Whispers were formed.
Right.
And one night on one of those talent shows, we met the 3 other guys who would later become members of the Whispers.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how the Whispers got started in Watts, back in the early 60s.
Right, and you heard them singing and said, okay, maybe they can join us.
This is a great 5-man because there's 2 of us and 3 of them.
Yes.
So it made a perfect 5 stand-up vocal group. So we said, hey, after we leave here tonight, let's put it together. And that's how it started.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about some of the elements that make the group so unique in that sound by talking about your father and including jazz and bebop that we just can't get enough of.
Our dreams were answered later on with R&B, but my father was what I call a bebop guy. You might have heard that term before, but back in the day, that's what he really wanted us to do. And he bought me a set of drums. He bought him a saxophone that we ended up later tearing up and not even, But his dream for us was to sing bebop.
Yes.
And we did learn it, but once we heard R&B, we sort of switched and went in another direction. And if you listen to our music even today, you hear bits and pieces of, because it's once it's in you, it's just there. We loved it, but we later found out as much as we loved it, we could make more money doing the other.
And was that the big driver with the interest in R&B, or was it just sort of, it was coming along and you all wanted to jump on that train?
It came along, and we happened, at that stage of our lives, R&B was kind of taking over. My dad was into Miles Davis, and he liked the scat.
Yes.
But R&B was taking over. In the 60s, whether you couldn't stop it. So we were, being the age that we were, we migrated into it just like everybody else. And against because my father fought hard. He thought R&B was kind of like nothing.
Right.
If you didn't sing jazz, you weren't legitimate. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we had to really kind of force him to like R&B. Right. And when we formed the group, it evolved from there. You know, it was like everybody else. We wanted to be like the Temptations.
Sure.
You know? Yeah.
And on that element, here's another difference too. Not really having a bass, you all were really able to find this niche, a little bit of the jazz, the bebop, and also sort of more ballad and not quite going for the bass. So it made you unique.
You know, you sound like, do you play an instrument? No, because you sound like a musician. I mean, knowing that a lot of people don't realize you're right. We were one of the few groups that didn't have that rolling bass. And I'm trying to say to myself, what does the doctor know about it? His doctor's talking about that bass was missing. You showing up something that maybe you don't want nobody to know about or whatever.
Well, you know what? To be actually, see, groups like the High-Lows, the Four Freshmen, they were the pop jazz groups, which is what my father liked.
Yes.
So we didn't have a bass, you know, but we wanted to have a bass. You know, we listened to Otis and the Temptations, Jim Melvin, but we had to kind of bide our time between pleasing our father and doing R&B. So we had a group without a bass, you know, and it was unusual because most R&B groups did have a bass.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to us about just sort of getting started. It's still so hard today, but back then, hard to imagine, coming from Watts and, like you said, competing, so to speak, with Motown. How did you all sort of get those first couple of breaks?
I think it started right after the talent show because my brother was us being twins. When he got drafted into the Army, the law was that you could only take one. You couldn't take both. So I was left to keep the music going, and he was over in Vietnam. And while he was in Vietnam, you know, we just sort of developed and developed and developed. Next thing you know, we got to be pretty good. We built our act up. The next thing you know, we were making a living at it. So by the time he came back, we put him in the group, but he was like in no man's
left
land.
me behind.
Left him behind, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, no, I really couldn't keep up. I mean, they had evolved into a professional stand-up vocal group. I think the years that I spent 2 years in Vietnam, but those 2 years they were kind of paying their dues, going all over the country. So when I got back to join this group, here I am. I didn't know how. I thought I could perform until I got in front of an audience, and I found myself lost. And I went to my mom, and I said, you know, Mom, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it. So she went to him, and she said, well, I'll tell you what, you tell your brother, you better make it, because if you don't make it, he ain't going to make it. So they kept me in the group, you know. Yeah,
absolutely. Tell us about that, though, during the time, because it's such a poignant point of being in Vietnam. I work with a lot of vets, and maybe how either music kept you going or the ways that you all literally did stay in touch, because we didn't have cell phones back then.
No, we had just wrote letters. I wrote to my mom. We wrote to him a couple of times. But in Vietnam, I was listening to groups like The Intruders, you know, I Want to Know Your Name. And I was in Vietnam in the Central Highlands on guard duty, listening to I'll Always Love My Mama. And I wrote him and told him how it felt to be in Vietnam listening to the impact of R&B went all over the world. Here I am in Vietnam, and I couldn't wait to get back to start singing what I was listening to. It was just an incredible feeling. Yeah.
Sure. Well, the other thing that makes you all so unique, I mean, there's so many elements, I hope we have time, is just being twins and the friendship and the relationship and the ups and downs, and I'm sure there have been some squabbles. How have you all mastered that? Because so many groups that are related, and certainly not twins, have imploded under the pressure.
Well, we've been here, and I'm shocked myself that we are here as long as we've been here. But we learned early age that you're only as strong as your weakest link. We were all, the two of us and the other guys, we were all raised by single mothers. And to this day, I think that's what helped us the most. They put a sense of fair play in us. We understood. They told us early, be what you are, not what you ain't.
Exactly.
That's how they put it. Yeah.
And that has stuck with us, because a lot of people say, well, man, how'd you guys make it doing to say, you know, we just stuck with R&B music. We knew that was the best that we could do, and that's what we stuck with. And to this day, I believe that's why we're still here.
Sure, absolutely. Talk to us about the relationship with Solar Records and how pivotal and instrumental that was, not only to your careers, but just to Los Angeles overall.
That was probably the most exciting time of our career. We met Mr. Dick Griffey, who had this dream. He kind of wanted to be like Berry Gordy in Motown. And as you know, that he and Don Cornelius started out with Soul Train Records. And that didn't end up being
Or the Eagles.
Yeah, you know the history.
You know, yeah.
But when he formed the Solar, the Sound of Los Angeles, it was just an exciting time because Dick Griffey had a great quality of letting young people stretch out and be who they are.
Right.
And in forming Solar Records, you know, we came in contact with Mr. Leon Silvers,
Yes.
who was in his prime as a producer,
Yes.
formerly of the Silvers.
Yes.
We came in contact with Leon, and the next thing you know, we're making all of this beautiful music.
Right.
He as a producer,
Right.
getting out of us as vocalists what a producer can do. I mean, it was the most exciting thing that ever happened to us, and we watched this little small label literally compete. And the next thing you know, Solar Records was, you know, we had big hits from Shalimar,
Yeah.
and Lakeside, and
Right.
Whispers, and Dynasty.
Absolutely.
It was very exciting, no question about it.
Sure. It seems like Leon maybe was a beat machine or a beatbox before anybody could even understand that. What was it like watching him work and not think that he was literally crazy?
You put it right.
Just right. He was a man ahead of his time as far as I'm concerned. And while it might sound like I'm prejudiced, I think he was probably the greatest R&B producer that ever did it. Because what he did, everything else came behind him. A lot of people copied him. You know, he changed our lives completely. We had been to the party. You know, what's the old saying that we almost got there, but no cigar.
Right.
When Leon came, we got 2 or 3 cigars. When he went in and did "And the Beat Goes On," we knew at the playback that night that we'd had our first hit. I mean, we knew when it was finished. Now, like you said, watching him go through what he did, I remember seeing Leon on his knees doing. He was a drum machine before there was
drum
machines.
Right.
And the incredible thing about him is that he knew what the outcome was going to be, but sometimes we didn't.
You didn't. No,
You didn't
until he
know.
finished.
Until he finished.
Yeah.
But when he did finish,
Right.
oh my God.
Yeah, he was a bass player. But that's what he did, and you know, with his group. But he had in his head, he knew what "And the Beat" was going to sound like before anybody else did.
Right.
And he wanted to put it together piece by piece. He would start with the bass drum on his knees, hitting
Which
the
is
bass
so
drum.
different.
He'd come up to the tom-toms. He knew what he was going to do with the cymbals.
Right.
And you'd be in the studio watching this, and you said, is this guy crazy or what? You know? When he finished with the entire thing that he had in his head, what you heard was the biggest record that we ever had in our lives.
Absolutely.
A 2 million seller.
And did you expect it to ever go that big though? Because many times people say, okay, I know it's a good song.
No, we did not.
And we can actually say to this day, the biggest record we've had, as a matter of fact, from 1980, starting with Leon, up until about 88, everything we had was either gold or silver, or, you know, but it started with him.
Yeah.
And we don't mind telling people we give him the full credit because he deserves it. He was a guy that was way ahead of everybody as far as I'm concerned. And behind him came Kashif, Evelyn Champagne, all these sounds
all
that
these
you heard.
sounds, yeah, that's true.
I don't want to use the word stole, but it came from
he
Leon.
originated.
It came from
it
Leon.
really did. Yeah.
Absolutely. What are those elements, and maybe we can only identify 1 or 2, that you think makes a song a hit, just in your general sense? If you hear music and you go, I really think that song, before we were done with it, we knew it would be a hit. What do you think those elements are?
Well, back then we called it it was real easy. It was the hook line. They call it, you know, and the hook line is something, it's amazing how people unconsciously like something that they don't even know that they like.
Right.
They are attracted to that hook line because it goes over and over again.
Sure.
Leon knew about the hook line because I never will forget when we did Hey Scotty, What's That Means, the night that we came to the studio. Leon sit us down. He said, Scotty, I got this song, and I want you, the one line in it says, I want you to shout, hey, Scotty, what that mean? Scotty says, Leon, I'm not singing that. There's no way am I going to sing that line. Well, Nick, the guy, the big guy in our group with the beard, he took Scotty outside. He said, Scotty, listen, this guy has brought us some tremendous hits. You got to give him an opportunity to finish what he's trying to tell you. Well, if you know anything about the Whispers' career, Hey Scotty, Keep On Loving Me is probably the 3rd biggest hit that we ever had. But this is what it was called, Hey Scotty. That was a hook line. And people didn't really know it, but that's what they latched onto, and that's what became one of our biggest hits of all time.
Well, what I learned about Leon before, and a lot of singers go through this, another thing that I think is so incredible about him, he made me understand truly what a producer is. Because before him, most singers, if you can sing, you figure, well, wait a minute, I can sing, I don't need no, what do I need to produce for? What do you do?
Yes.
You know, that was
exactly. What is it you do?
Leon is the one that made me understand. I don't care how well you think you sing.
Right.
There's things that I'm going to bring to the table that you will never dream of.
Sure.
And he was excellent. He was the man that did that. And if you want to know the truth, because of him, I don't care who the producer is, how old or young, I fully respect, because they bring a whole nother element.
Sure.
It has nothing to do with how well you sing.
Right.
It's about, you ask the question, where does it come from? The commercialism, having the pulse of the people, that's what the producers listen to.
Sure.
You listen to your voice, and you might be able to sing, but he brings all those other elements. And to me, he did that better than anybody else.
Not just with the Whispers, as you know.
Sure.
I mean,
Right.
Shalimar and his own group. I mean, he at that time, he was developing himself, because he was so influenced by what was happening in Motown, but he took his little ideas from the Silvers, and they sang what we call like barbershop harmony.
Exactly. Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But he uplifted it and brought it to where people, all R&B guys all over this country, were copying him. They wanted that sound.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Being twins, talking about sounds and music, how do you all negotiate and decide who sings, the lead on a song?
We used to go
without it coming to blows.
Man, we could have won a Grammy. They should have had us on television, because we argued a lot about who was going to sing what.
Yes.
But now here again, back to producers.
Yes.
Leon was able to hear that half a step difference. He sings a half a step higher than I do.
Right.
And Leon had the insight to understand that when we get into the songs that bring about a highness about them, I want Scotty doing it. When we got something that's kind of mellow and smooth, I want you to do it. Because he had listened to our voices. So we ended up settling for that. But like, for instance, when we first heard Lady, we fought over it. He wanted to do the lead, and I wanted to do the lead,
Yes.
Well, we went in, and Nick said, I'll tell you what, Walt, give Scotty a shot. I think this is in his vein. He ended up doing Lady in one take.
Wow.
Now, we came back and we did other takes, but we kept the first take. And to show you what producing is all about, they were right. As much as I wanted to do the lead, when I heard his lead, the playback, I said, I can't mess with that. That's how it goes.
Absolutely. This seems to be another element of the success. Sublimating ego, putting it down, not bringing it to blows, not bringing it to a gunfight or even something worse. And where do you think that comes from?
You just said one word that I latch on to with singers, entertainers, and producers. Ego. Ego. Did you ever notice that sometimes the bigger an artist gets, the more unsuccessful they become because of one reason, ego. You have to be humble enough to go in and let a guy tell you that as well as you can sing, I see something that you don't see within your vocals.
And I hear something.
Now your ego will either allow you to say, wait a minute, I mean, I'm a bad, I don't need that. Or your ego will have you with the humility to say, he's right. That's what we never had a problem with. We never had a problem with taking direction. Babyface, L.A. Reid, they were young enough to be our kids. We had no problem listening to what they wanted to do. And when they came within the mood, the rest is history. That was one of the biggest hits we ever had.
And not only that, we had no problem with knowing how, well, they later became huge, but even that didn't have, our thing was that, matter of fact, we would have rather dealt with somebody who was unknown. Because that way you have to come in throwing your credentials, if you know what I mean. We can deal with the talent that you bring and forget about how big or small you are.
How many hits you've had. You know what I'm saying?
We don't have that problem.
No. And let's talk about him. So he comes in very unassuming. Deal won't take his music for the most part because he really writes ballads. And just talk to us about that relationship and how it unfolded with Babyface.
We met L.A. and
Kenny.
Kenny Edmonds is what he was known, but L.A. Reid. We met them in Atlanta at the yearly convention down there. And they approached us, and Kenny literally said to us, guys, the deal of the group that I'm in, they all want to be Prince. So the songs that I submit, they don't like.
Right.
So would you guys take a listen to some of these songs?
Yes.
Man, now we're in Atlanta. This is years ago. These guys started playing songs. We went back to Los Angeles. We told Dick Griffey, there's a young couple out here, 2 young producers named Kenny Edmond and L.A. Reid. As soon as you can, go find them and sign them.
Wow.
And the rest is history. These guys were young. They had their own ideas. And it just so happened for us that the way Kenny wrote was more for us than
Kenny
it was
Edmond
for the
in
deal. The
particular.
deal didn't want in the move.
No,
Can you believe that?
No, right.
They all wanted to be Prince. They all wanted to wear
be
makeup.
and
They all wanted to do Prince style music.
Right. Be a
So
clone, basically.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So it just so happened, it just shows you how things go, because we went in the studio with these guys, and man, we were just a perfect match. Kenny wrote what we were feeling, and we sang the way he wanted it done.
Right.
Well, there's a story that I have to tell you about Kenny in particular, because we always talk about this, and we wonder. We went to him one night and we said, Kenny, what we need is another And the Beat Goes On, which is what Leon Silvers did, right? The biggest record we ever had. And he says to us, and I know it sounds like exaggeration, but he said, okay, well, I'll bring you one back tomorrow.
Right.
Tomorrow night.
Right.
Like
In the
that.
day.
Well,
So Leaveil said, these young guys, he gonna bring us a hit like And the Beat tomorrow night. So we laughed. He said, they young, that's what they thinking.
Well, first of all, they didn't understand when you talk about a hit.
It was
like
a double
Respect,
platinum record.
all those kind of records. You only hear one of them. You don't hear no 2 Respects.
No, right.
You don't hear no 2 And the Beats.
No, right, exactly.
So when he said he would bring back another And the Beat,
Right, in a day.
we said in a day. We said, oh, great, man. Just bring it on back. We'll be happy when you get here, right?
Right.
Lo and behold, he came back the next night,
Right.
and he had Rock Steady.
Right. Amazing.
Stunned us.
Sure.
We said, wait a minute, this can't be real. Second biggest record we've ever had. He listened to And the Beat,
Right.
and he gave you his rendition. Now that shows you how incredible. I don't know if he understood how bad he was.
Right.
But he didn't. Now that's never happened again. Every now and then a little jewel would jump out.
Pearl.
But when he said he'd bring back another And the Beat, and he brought back Rock Steady,
the rest
he
is
pretty
history.
much did that.
Yeah, that's exactly what he did.
Right.
Yeah.
And that seems to be this yet another element of being willing to work with younger people,
That's
being
exactly
willing
right.
with the ego side, being
That's
willing
exactly
to
right.
take a chance
That's
where somebody else may not have, and also just continuing to have that sound.
Absolutely.
On that note, I want to bring up remastering and the fact that you all are redoing your entire catalog. Tell us how important it is for artists to do that and what it means.
Well, before we answer that, though, let me say to you in particular, my friend, we want to thank you sincerely for giving us this platform to talk about what we're getting ready to talk. It is very important. You didn't have to do this. We don't take it for granted. We appreciate you giving us this to talk about redoing our masters. We're in the process of redoing our masters. Simply put, now you might get different opinions. We both have different opinions about how it should go, but the question might be asked, well, why are you at this late date even redoing your masters? It's because we now, at this point, we would like to get some of the benefits that other companies got through thievery years ago. I don't know no other way to put it. Call it what it is.
Well, we differ. That's why he said.
That's why we differ.
Scotty's pretty brutal when it comes to that.
I only know one way to talk, and it's just say what you feel. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. But we shouldn't have to redo. We shouldn't even have to. We've been singing 54 years.
Right.
And we find here, thank God, we are still able vocally to go back and redo. But if they hadn't been taken in the first, we wouldn't have had to go through this. So this young people need to understand this even more so than us. It's very important that you know that you can do this. This is about ownership, is what we're talking about. And
well, it didn't come right away. There's a statute of limitations of it, but after so many years, you can own what you've recorded. And where we differ at is that I think young people, they are at that stage. We learn from them. As I think that what the rappers did, I admire so much what they did when they were, before hip hop got to be like it is today, what the rappers basically said to the record companies is, before we let you take advantage of us, we'll sell our product out of the trunk of our car. Because they believe so much in ownership. When we came up 50 years ago, we didn't have the opportunity. You had no clout. You know, it took James Brown and Chuck Berry and Little Richard. When I heard that they gave James Brown $63 million, I said, man, they owe him 4 times that. Because they took advantage. He didn't have the advantage of owning. Ray Charles later, in some years later, was able to own his product. And he did it before anybody could do it.
He was the only one that
you know,
did
that he just told Atlantic, I'm not giving you my music. If I can't own it, I'm not going to record it. Well, we were around at that time too. I mean, the Temptation, all of Motown, Berry Gordy, God bless him. But when you own it, now you decide who can hear it and how it's played and what it's paid and what's paid for it.
And who can benefit from it.
And who can benefit from it. So to have, thank God I can sing like I did at 19. Thank you, Jesus. So we can own our stuff now. And when corporations and companies want to have music for television, they can come to us now, not the record company. What a joy that is to be able to have that ownership. And we, like he said, we said to all young people, if you can own it from the very beginning, own it. That's where the money is. Ownership means everything. And we're in a position to where we can own our catalog, and that's what we're doing.
And it sounds like the difference of that could literally be between getting nothing, even though the song's played all the time and popular, and actually being able to make a living and or survive.
And make a tremendously, because now we're not talking domestic, we're talking worldwide. So when you hear And the Beat Goes On in Germany, you know, and they have to go to Canada, who owns the rights, now they can come to us. You come to the Whispers to get And the Beat. If you want a television commercial with And the Beat and you want to negotiate with somebody, talk to us. Man, I mean, what an asset. You know, we're just thankful that we're able to do that.
Absolutely. If I understand correctly, Anita Baker was sort of...
she did the same thing. A lot of the white artists,
Kelly
Clarkson, they all understand it now, you know. I mean, record companies, they mean well and they do well, but they are used to having all the power from the inception. They owned everything. Well, now you take guys our age. I mean, we were just glad to be on record, you know. And we would tell young people all the time, you know, no, don't give me some tennis shoes. You know, don't give me 3%. You know, I want to know if the company grossed 10 million, how much of that is fairly belongs to me. You know what I'm saying? So
well, see, when he makes it, see, that's what he says that the record companies mean well. No, they don't, in my humble opinion. Because if they did, we wouldn't have this problem in the first place. But like he said, I do want to say to young people, because he just said something I think that the young people need to, your priorities do need to change. They shouldn't be a tennis shoe. It should be the recordings. You understand? Learn this from us if you don't learn anything. Your priority should be owning your, and I hate to say this, especially black acts. You need to own your own product. Because if you don't, believe me, somebody else will take it right away from you.
Absolutely.
And really profit in a way.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
In ways it's unbelievable.
Tell us about how busy you all still keep at this point in your lives, because I know you all were kind with your time to fit us in today and things like that.
Man, you know what? We just say this. What a blessing. We tour about 8 months out of the year, and to be in your 70s, you know, Dick Griffey, before he died, we were at a deposition when we left Solar and he was trying to keep us, and he said something at a deposition one day. He told the lawyer, to the judge, we were in there discussing why we should leave Solar, and Dick Griffey said, no, I want to keep these guys. And the judge said, well, what is it? Why are you working so well? Why can't they have their freedom? And Dick Griffey said to that guy, he said, you know what, these guys are going to be singing until they're 80 years old, and I want to have every dime of that money that I can get.
And he said that.
And he is absolutely right. Who in the world? We thought he was crazy at the time. But here we are, you know, in our 70s, still singing. So all praises to the man upstairs.
And you said us making time for you.
No, we making time. No, we appreciate you, man.
This platform you've given us to discuss what we've just discussed, I can't say thank you enough.
Well, just one of those last elements to tease out, and you guys have been kind with your time. really making good quality music, lyrics, and the ability for it to last. Do you think that we're now really seeing a significant resurgence in the quality of the type of music that you all make?
I do. I think just like when we came along, there was some that wasn't that great, but there was some that was great. The young people today, oh man, I mean, listen, Bruno Mars,
Right.
you know, Beyonce, John Legend. These young people are intelligent.
Sure.
They're articulate. They can express themselves, and they understand the business.
Right.
They've come so much further than we could ever do because we didn't have the clout at the time. I'm very proud of the young people that perform today. Hip hop, the only thing I wish is that hip hop would understand that there's room for both of us.
Sure. Yes.
You know, there's room for R&B and there's room for hip hop.
Exactly.
We just were at Microsoft a week ago,
Right.
and it was sold out. So R&B music is still alive and well, and so is hip hop.
Right.
But man, what a blessing it is. The music is being written, in my opinion, extremely well. The lyrics,
Right.
we were blessed to have Nicholas Caldwell, who we lost in 2016. He was the only writer in our group. But man, you know, the Babyfaces, the Midnight Stars that we work with, we always emphasize good lyrics.
Yes.
And I know that that's why our staying power, the longevity that is because of what we sing as well as how we sing it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was so relatable and clean
Oh.
and passionate and
Absolutely,
loving
man.
and
Absolutely.
respectful.
And respectful.
Yeah.
Always respect our ladies, our moms, our sisters.
Oh,
Oh yeah,
absolutely,
no
absolutely.
question.
Sure. Last question, I promise. The show's called Music and Medicine. When you hear that, each one of you, what does that mean to you?
Well, when you say medicine, I think of us as being blessed. We had the good fortune, we never smoked, never drank, no drugs. And the only reason I think that we're here, you know, I'm 77 years old.
Wow.
And I know I'm blessed.
Sure.
You know, I take one high blood pressure pill. That's
Right,
it
right.
in terms of medicine.
Right.
But I feel like I'm blessed, man. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you
For
will
me,
hear that.
when I first heard that we were doing this, they said music and medicine. And then I found out you're a doctor.
It's a
And
rumor.
now,
It might be true.
through this interview, I think you probably really are a musician. I mean, you may be hiding behind it, but there's music there somewhere. So I don't want to turn the question around,
No.
but I gotta ask you, how did you come up with the concept?
Sure. Well, I was a musician, at least just classically. So
Okay.
your ear is accurate, but nowhere near singing or any of the type
So
of
you
auspicious
see
things.
artists and musicians, when it comes to medicine,
Right.
you know, in our industry, a lot of people don't take care of themselves.
Right. Exactly.
They just don't. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, right today, we do concert with groups that came up with us,
Yes.
and you can see, man, from a medical standpoint, that they haven't taken. You can't smoke drugs,
No.
you know, for 20 years and think you
Right.
can still do. You have to take care of yourself.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly.
And I'm sure you stress that.
Sure,
When
absolutely.
in my industry, I see it all the time.
Right. So some of my patients are musicians. Even
Then
though
you know.
I was,
Okay,
and so
yeah, I
you know, I'm
understand.
always encouraging them. And the same thing. I just see the two as being
Absolutely.
intrinsically intertwined because it's so important for our community, but for
You're
people in
right,
general.
right.
And then more
Absolutely.
importantly, I think music can be a medicine or at least a way to
Oh, no
help pull
question.
people out of some of these challenges, like you said, be it substance, be it self-esteem issues, which I think
Absolutely.
is often underlying it.
Absolutely.
Even though they've got a very public image, it's how do you feel inside? Do you really love yourself? So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want the community's help to be a lot better, and I just think this is a great way to show it.
It's
Wonderful, man.
It's just
Wonderful.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you
definitely.
so much, man.
Yeah, well, absolutely. We appreciate it. And I did promise that was the last one, but I wanted to touch base about the song that you made during COVID because just the way you recorded it was amazing. I think the lyrics are still so vital, and I know it was written some time ago. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Well, you know what? It goes back to our history. We've always been conscious about what's going on around us. If you remember, this maybe before
Yeah,
you
he's
were
a
even
little bit
born,
too young.
we had a record called "Seems Like I Gotta Do Wrong Before They Notice Me." You know the tune. But how long, when COVID hit, and we got to see people start dying, you know, and so once again we said, now I remember back in the '60s. We were stuck. I know I lived in Watts and I had my problems with the police and so forth. Well, let's fast forward to here it is in the 2000s, and we're still having the same problem.
Yes.
So Magic Mendez, who's a bass player for us, came up with the song, he asked the question of how long? How long are we gonna have to continue to put up with this? You know, man, I mean, we saw
George Floyd. That's really what's. That's
the day
what
that we
started
saw
it
that. That's
all.
really what started. We
all.
all happened to be. The good Lord made it possible, if you remember, for everybody to be at home to see that happen.
On television.
It affected us greatly, man. So Magic called us with the song, and he said, "Man, this is the perfect question to ask." We had to. Leaveil lives in Vegas. We lived here, and at that time we were wearing masks. Right. We told Leaveil, "You got to come to L.A." He said, "Well, I'm not getting on a plane. I'll drive."
Sure.
So we came and we got in Scotty's garage in Northridge, and we were wearing masks, and we recorded that song. How long? And it meant the world to us, man. We couldn't wait to put it out.
Sure. Well, it means the world to us. Not only continue to see you prolific, but promoting health, taking care of yourselves, still being active, and now finally getting the financial rewards you deserve for so many hits, so many decades.
Thank you so much.
I can't thank you enough for your time, coming out and speaking to us, fitting us in.
Thank you, my brother. It's my pleasure.
So
thank you.
God bless you, man.
Sure. God bless you. Welcome to Music and Medicine. Welcome to Music and Medicine. Welcome to Music and Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Moshe Lewis.